After a humiliating incident in a trendy cafe where homeless Marine veteran Franklin Carr was kicked out because of his appearance, a video of him went viral. But instead of shaming him, it awakened a wave of support. His comrades-in-arms organized a convoy as a sign of respect. His daughter returned home, and the city gave him a chance to become part of society again. Franklin got a place to live, a new purpose, and helped launch a veterans assistance program that has changed hundreds of lives. Welcome to my channel. I didn't plan on stepping into the cafe that morning, not with my back howling like it had every day since Fallujah, and my knees stiff from a night spent on the bench behind the church. But the rain came in sudden and sideways, the kind that finds its way through every seam of a jacket, and I needed shelter. The only spot within limping distance was this sleek little joint on Broad Street. You know the type, mason jar light fixtures, jazz playing on the speakers, people with silver laptops and silent eyes. I stood in the doorway for a second too long, soaked through, my old Marine duffel slipping off my shoulder. The water pooled around my boots like a welcome mat that read, "Not for you." The barista clocked me the moment I stepped in. He was maybe 25, with a bun tied high on his head and an apron too clean to have ever known a real mess. "Can I help you?" he said, which is retail code for, "Why are you here?" "Just a water, please." "Until the rain passes," I answered. My voice still sounded like gravel on a dirt road, even to me. His lip twitched like I just spit in his espresso machine. "We've got a minimum purchase to sit, sir. This isn't a shelter." I nodded, used to it, dug into my coat pocket and pulled out 3 crumpled singles, half my weekly cash, give or take. "I can get a small coffee then." He didn't even reach for the money. "That won't cover any of our coffees." "No purchase, no seat." He said it loud enough for the guy in the cardigan 2 tables over to look up from his screen. Conversations dipped. Chairs creaked. I felt their eyes, the ones that measure your worth by your boots and your beard, not by the stories behind them. I should have just walked out. Lord knows I've done it before. But I stood my ground, not because I wanted the coffee, but because part of me hoped maybe, just maybe, someone would see me. Instead, a man in a tailored coat said loud enough for God and his followers to hear, "You stink, man. Can't you smell that?" Laughter. Not much, but enough to stick. I didn't say a word. Reached for my duffel, ready to leave. But the barista had moved around the counter, grabbed my elbow with a little too much urgency. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." His pull caught me off balance. The duffel slipped. When it hit the floor, it gave up its contents like it had given up on dignity. An old pair of socks, my threadbare VA folder, a half-empty pill bottle, and a mesh pouch that held my Purple Heart. That metal hit the floor with a metallic clink and just lay there. The purple center caught the cafe lights for one brief, defiant second. Someone gasped. A woman. I caught her eyes just long enough to see recognition before she looked away. Just like that. Like seeing a ghost and pretending it didn't ruin your whole day. The barista didn't even flinch. Used the toe of his spotless sneaker to push the metal in the pouch back toward me. "Take your stuff and go." I knelt slowly, back stiff, knees barking. Picked up the metal, wiped the dust from its face, and tucked it back in the pouch like I was tucking in an old friend. Nobody moved. Nobody helped. Nobody dared. Outside, the rain was still falling in heavy sheets. I stood under the narrow awning for a while, letting the chill sink into my bones. The Purple Heart was pressed to my chest beneath the layers, dry as I could keep it. After 20 minutes, I turned toward the park on 8th and Main. There's a gazebo there. Not much, but better than wet concrete. I walked slow, the kind of slow that comes from pain, not leisure. My whole body negotiating with itself to keep moving forward. When I finally got there, I set down the duffel and opened it again. The metal was fine. My folded flag, God, that flag. The one draped over Evan's casket before his folks sent it to me with a note. He would have wanted you to have it. Still dry. Still there. Next to it, a photo, 12 guys in desert camo, arm in arm before a chopper. Only 5 of us came back. I ran my thumb over each face. I still remembered all their names. And then there was the letter from my daughter, Melanie. She's in college, halfway across the country. We write. Not often, but enough. She doesn't know how bad things have gotten. I make sure she doesn't. I was about to read her latest one when I heard a voice. Franklin? Sergeant Franklin Carr. It took me a moment to place him. Charlie Ruiz. We crossed paths at the VA hospital a few times. Back then, we both had roofs. Now, I guess we both didn't. Charlie, I said, nodding. He made his way up to the gazebo, dragging a cart of his own. Sat down beside me with a groan. Thought that was you. Been a minute. Yeah, I replied. Lost the apartment last spring. Too much red tape, not enough rent money. Charlie just nodded. You tell your daughter? No, I said. She's doing well. I won't be her burden. He didn't argue. He just understood. Like we all do. And that's when I heard my phone buzz. The old flip one. Battery barely holds a charge, but it's mine. The screen lit up with a text and a link. Someone had filmed the whole cafe scene. Captioned it, "Homeless vet causes drama for coffee. Watch this freeloader get served." It had already gone viral. Comments brutal. People calling me a fake, a beggar, a scam. I closed the phone and set it aside. I've been through worse. But somewhere across town, someone else was watching that same video. And for him, it wasn't just a video. It was a call to arms. It's a strange thing, watching your own pain go viral. A million strangers arguing over whether you're worth a seat in a coffee shop. But I'd already made peace with being invisible. What I hadn't expected was who might still be watching. 3 miles from that park bench, in a law office on the 15th floor of the Harper Building, a man named Calvin Rios stared at the same video. Suited up, Bluetooth in his ear, legal pad in his lap, but the second he saw me on screen, the world around him stopped. His coffee cooled untouched. The phone call he was half listening to went mute in his mind. He leaned forward, elbows on knees, heart thudding. "Frankie," he whispered to the screen. Calvin Rios wasn't just any lawyer. He'd once been Private First Class Rios of the 307th Medical Evacuation Unit. And I had once pulled his bloody body out of the wreckage of a Humvee in Kandahar after a roadside bomb turned metal into teeth and men into memories. He still walked with a limp. Still kept the photo of our squad in his desk drawer, under the divorce papers and promotion letters. And when he saw me soaked, humiliated, cast out, he felt something shift inside him. Guilt, maybe. Or just the sharpness of remembering someone who once saved your life. Within 15 minutes, he'd tracked down the original poster. Within 30, he'd rallied 4 other vets from our old unit. One of them, Jerry Stokes, ran a trucking company now. Another, Manny Delgado, taught high school history. And then there was Lou Washington, our fire team leader. Retired now, but still the kind of guy who could organize chaos with one phone call. They looped in more vets. Word spread across message boards, group chats, old Facebook groups with rusty logos and inside jokes. My name hit 100 inboxes in an hour. They weren't angry. Not just angry. They were hurt. Because if it could happen to me, one of them, who they remembered crawling through hell with, then what did that say about the rest of us? That night, I stayed under the gazebo again. I had no idea about the calls or the messages or the growing storm. The rain was finally gone, but the chill stuck around. I kept the metal close. Not because it made me feel brave, but because it reminded me someone once thought I was. The next morning, just after sunrise, I used the park restroom to wash up again. Folded my jacket, repacked the duffel. Same routine. Discipline doesn't disappear just because your address does. Across the street, that same cafe opened its doors. The same barista, face clean and smirk reset, set up the outdoor tables without a flicker of memory. Like the day before had never happened. I was about to leave the park when I heard it. A rumble. Not thunder this time, but diesel engines. 1. Then 2. Then 3. They weren't city trucks. I turned the corner just in time to see a convoy of 5 military transport vehicles roll onto Broad Street. They parked in formation, boxing in the entire block. And out they came. Veterans. Not 1 or 2. Dozens. Maybe 50. Men and women. Young and old. Some in full dress uniform, others in worn-out jackets with faded patches. A few with canes. One in a wheelchair. One with a service dog. I froze. My heart jumped into my throat. Because I recognized them. Not all, but some. Lou, standing straight as a tree with silver at his temples. Manny with his history teacher glasses. And Calvin, holding a sign that simply read, "We don't leave our own behind." They saw me, and they parted. Made a path straight to the cafe. The barista looked up from the espresso machine and dropped the portafilter. Colonel Eliza Monroe was the one who led them. Former 101st Airborne, now in a smart civilian suit that still carried authority like perfume. She stepped up to the cafe entrance, turned to the gathering crowd of curious bystanders and camera phones, and spoke. Yesterday, this business turned away a veteran. Not because he caused trouble, not because he was dangerous, but because of how he looked. She pointed at me. This man is Sergeant Franklin Carr. He served 3 tours. carried wounded soldiers through live fire, suffered spinal injuries that still affect him every single day. And yesterday, he was thrown out like trash. The crowd shifted. Some lowered their phones. Some stopped chewing. Some started to see. Monroe continued, this cafe, like many places in this country, forgot something important. Not all heroes look the part. Not every battle leaves a visible scar. And not everyone who serves returns whole. Two vets came forward with a wooden sign, placed it right in front of the cafe doors. Respect earned is respect owed. The barista emerged, pale and visibly sweating. I didn't know he was. How was I supposed to know? You're not supposed to know, Monroe said, her voice calm but cutting. You're supposed to treat people with dignity regardless. I stepped forward then, my limbs shaking, not from pain, but from something deeper, from the feeling of being seen. This isn't necessary, I said. My voice barely carried. Lou stepped up beside me. Yeah, it is. Because it wasn't just about you, Frankie. It's about all of us. Then someone else stepped out of the formation. A young man in a suit with a prosthetic leg. I hadn't recognized him at first. But then he said, Sergeant Carr carried me 2 miles through the mountains. My femur was shattered, and he went back for 3 others after me. He didn't ask for thanks. But now I'm here to give it. The crowd went still. Then, like a slow building wave, more stepped forward. Stories poured out. Not just about me, but about all the invisible soldiers. The homeless ones. The broken ones. The ones who never asked for help because pride was the only thing they had left. The cafe offered coffee. No one took it. The veterans hadn't come for caffeine. They'd come to say, we remember. By noon, the convoy pulled out. But something had changed in the air. I could feel it. The city had seen us. Seen me. And I wasn't invisible anymore. I didn't know where to put myself after that. I stood in the middle of Broad Street, my duffel slung over one shoulder, watching the convoy disappear into the city traffic like something out of a dream. People lingered, unsure whether they'd just witnessed a protest, a parade, or a reckoning. Some clapped. Some cried. Most just stared. And me? I felt raw. Like someone had peeled back a layer I'd spent years building. I wasn't used to being seen. Not like that. Frankie. I turned. Calvin Rios stood beside a black sedan, holding my duffel now like it weighed more than his legal briefcase. He smiled, but it wasn't a charity smile. It was recognition. A brother's smile. You're coming with me, he said. You can stay in the guest room. I'm fine, I replied out of instinct. Got the park. He gave me that look, the one officers used to give when you claimed a twisted ankle was nothing. Guest room, Frank. It's not a debate. Truth is, I was too tired to argue. So I nodded. That night, I slept in a real bed for the first time in a year. Sheets soft. Room warm. A door that closed without a broken lock. My spine didn't know what to do with it. Neither did I. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of bacon and coffee. I shuffled into the kitchen, still expecting it all to vanish like a cruel dream. Lou was there, leaning against the counter like it was a command post. Manny sat at the table with a VA folder. And Calvin was at the stove, flipping pancakes like he was born for it. Morning, Sarge, Lou said. I grunted. Calvin set a plate down in front of me. Eat. Then we're going to pick up the rest of your things. I paused, fork halfway to my mouth. What do you mean? Your storage unit, he said. VA records said it was scheduled for default. We paid it off yesterday. I should have thanked him. Should have felt relief. But all I felt was shame. That they'd needed to do it at all. You didn't have to, I mumbled. Yeah, we did, Manny said. You'd have done it for us. And did. After breakfast, we drove out to the storage place. I hadn't been back since they sent the 3rd warning notice. My name was on the unit, but by then I couldn't even afford bus fare to check on it. When the roll-up door creaked open, the light fell on everything I'd saved from my old life. A small TV. My wedding photo, still in the cracked frame. A beat-up trunk filled with old uniforms and ribbons. Melanie's baby blanket, yellow with a faded cartoon elephant stitched in the corner. And the journal. My war journal. I kept it for years. Pages filled with things I couldn't say aloud. I picked it up, ran my fingers over the cover, and for the first time in a long time, I let myself remember. All of it. The dust, the fire, the silence after an explosion. The way a man cries without sound when he realizes his best friend didn't make it back. We packed it all into Calvin's trunk. Everything fit. Strange how your whole life can shrink like that. By the time we got back to his place, I'd made up my mind. I can't stay here long, I said. You've got a family. He didn't argue. We've got options, he said instead. David's got a complex, veteran units, elevator access, VA-friendly rent. We talked to the building manager already. There's a spot. I looked away. Feels like charity. Lou barked a laugh. It ain't. It's back pay. So I said yes. A week later, I moved into the unit. 1 bedroom. No bugs. No leaks. A bed that didn't sag in the middle. They helped me hang the flag, Evan's flag, right over the window. The Purple Heart went on the nightstand. And every morning since, one of them showed up. With breakfast, with news, with rides to appointments. Like a rotating watch on a base camp. I told them to stop. They didn't listen. Across town, that cafe changed, too. New signs. New training. The corner table? Reserved for veterans now. They even offered me a free coffee. I never went back. But others did. Dozens of vets. They filled that table every day. Never loud. Never disruptive. Just there. A quiet presence. A reminder. And slowly, people noticed. Not just the cafe regulars, but the community. The story spread, not just the video, but the follow-up. The convoy. The speeches. The silent strength. The hashtags changed. Hashtag respect the uniform. Hashtag invisible no more. People stopped to listen. Some for the first time. One morning, a little boy asked his dad why the men saluted even without a flag. His dad said, because sometimes, son, a man is the flag. I was across the street when I heard that. I don't cry easy. Not after all I've seen. But that got me. The days settled into something close to peace. I'd get up at dawn, just like always. Shower. Brew a pot of coffee that didn't taste like cardboard. Then sit on the little balcony that overlooked the park across the street. I never thought I'd find comfort in stillness again. One morning, just after sunrise, I heard a knock. Not at the door, but the metal mailbox outside my apartment. I limped down the steps, still slower than I used to be, and found the usual stack, VA notices, advertisements, and a single envelope with familiar handwriting. Melanie. My hand shook as I opened it. I hadn't heard from her since before the cafe mess. She usually wrote once a month. Neutral. Polite. Always on schedule. But this envelope wasn't like the others. 2 pages. No return address. Her handwriting was tight, like she'd pressed each word into the paper. Dad. I saw the video. I recognized you before the caption even loaded. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you say you were living on the streets? You wrote about moving around, about exploring the city. I believed you. I was angry when I was younger, angry that you left, that you missed birthdays, that you weren't like other dads. But I get it now. I see what you carried back with you. I'm withdrawing from classes for the semester. I'm coming home next week. Not just to visit. I'm coming home. We'll figure it out. Together. You don't have to carry it alone anymore. Mel. I sat back down, envelope still in my hand, and stared out over the street as the sun climbed over the rooftops. One tear slipped down my cheek before I could stop it. I wiped it fast. Muscle memory. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing her voice in my head, not as it was now, but when she was 7, asking if I'd be home for her birthday. Back then, I always said, I'll try, which was soldier speak for no. I'd lost so much of her childhood. I never asked for forgiveness because I didn't think I deserved it. Still don't. But she was coming home. The next morning, Colonel Monroe called. She checked in every few days, part Minter, part Lifeline. We talked like old comrades. No pretense. The mayor's office reached out, she said. They're looking to launch a veteran outreach program. Housing. Jobs. Real help. They want advisors who've lived it. That's great, I said, meaning it. They're offering paid positions. Your name's on the list. I laughed. That a joke? Nope. You're not just a story anymore, Carr. You're a symbol. You want to keep others from falling through the cracks? Start here. I didn't answer right away. My instinct was to say no. I'd spent years trying not to be a burden. I didn't know how to be anything else. You don't get to say no, she added, like she could read my mind. Not if you care about the next one out there who won't have a convoy show up for him. I looked at the photo on my wall, our unit, back in Helmand Province. Evans, laughing. Manny, shirt half-buttoned. Me, standing tall. I'll come to the meeting, I said finally. Good, Monroe replied. Bring your daughter. Let her see what you're building. That weekend, I pulled out every photo I had of Melanie, baby pictures, school photos, her graduation portrait. I set them out like a gallery across the table. I didn't know how to explain what had happened to me, but maybe I didn't need to explain everything. Maybe I just needed to show her I hadn't stopped being her father, even when I stopped believing I deserved to be. Sunday afternoon, I called her. First time I dialed in years. When she answered, her voice cracked like mine. "I'm looking forward to seeing you," I said. And then I added something I hadn't said out loud in years. "I think I might have found something useful to do around here." The day Melanie arrived, I was waiting by the front entrance of the apartment. Clean jeans, button-down shirt. I'd even combed my beard, which hadn't seen a brush in weeks before that. She stepped out of the taxi with a backpack slung over her shoulder and hesitation in her eyes. Her hair was tied back, same as her mother used to wear it when she meant business. She stopped a few feet from me, like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to hug me. So I stepped forward and did it first. Her arms wrapped around me with a kind of softness I didn't expect. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But something close enough. Inside, I showed her around the apartment. The couch I'd found secondhand. The Purple Heart on the nightstand. The fridge stocked with real food. I didn't have much, but what I had was mine. "I like it," she said, tracing a finger along the photo of our old house I'd pinned to the wall. "It feels like a fresh page." I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. The next morning, we walked together to the mayor's outreach meeting. The city had reserved space in the Civic Center, a plain building that smelled like floor polish and politics. But the room was full. Vets from every decade. Advocates. A few city officials trying hard to look like they understood. Colonel Monroe stood near the podium, scanning the room like a hawk. When she spotted me, she gave a short nod. We sat in the second row. Melanie squeezed my hand under the table. The meeting opened with stats. Too many numbers. Too many charts. And then Monroe stepped up. She didn't pull out a speech. Didn't click through a slideshow. She told my story. Not the viral video version. The real one. The marches. The injuries. The park bench. The coffee shop. People listened. Really listened. Then she pointed to me. "And this man, this is Sergeant Franklin Carr. He doesn't want sympathy. He doesn't want handouts. But he knows what it's like to fall through the cracks. And we need his voice if we're going to fix the system." All eyes turned toward me. I stood. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't waver. I served because I believed in protecting people. I didn't expect medals. I didn't expect applause. But I did believe that coming home meant something. That it meant we weren't forgotten. I paused, letting the silence speak. For too long, we've treated veterans like they come with expiration dates. Like they're useful until the uniform comes off. That's got to change. Melanie looked at me with tears in her eyes. Not sadness. Pride. After the meeting, Monroe pulled me aside. "We've got a job lined up," she said. "Program development. Outreach coordinator. Part-time to start. You'll help build this from the ground up." I didn't say yes right away. Instead, I turned to Melanie. "What do you think?" She smiled. "I think you've already started rebuilding." That night, we sat on the balcony with cups of tea. She told me about college, about her roommate who snored and the professor who kept calling her Melissa. I told her about Evans, about the chopper crash, about the night I couldn't save 3 good men. It was the first time we'd talked like that. Honest. No armor. Before bed, she pulled something from her backpack. "I brought this," she said. "Figured you might want it back." It was the Father's Day card she'd made me in 4th grade. The one I kept in my footlocker until I lost the house. I took it with both hands. Taped it to the wall above the Purple Heart. "You kept it?" I asked. "Always," she said. For the first time in a long time, I slept without dreams. The corner table at Brew and Bean, once the site of my quiet humiliation, had become something of a shrine. Not to me. To us. Veterans filled the spot daily. Some brought chessboards. Others just sat with coffee and stories that hung in the air like pipe smoke. They didn't talk about the incident. They didn't need to. Their presence said enough. One morning, I walked by with Melanie. She noticed it first. The chalkboard outside the cafe read, "Table 9, reserved for those who served. Ask before you judge." Inside, I caught sight of the barista, the same kid who once pushed me toward the door. He was bussing tables, but his posture was different. No arrogance. Just focus. At the vet's table, a young father and his son were seated nearby. The boy, maybe 7, watched as 3 vets exchanged salutes before sitting. "Dad," the boy asked, "why do they salute when there's no flag?" His father hesitated, then said, "Because sometimes, son, a man is the flag." One of the vets heard. Smiled. That smile stuck with me all day. Across town, I met with Monroe and the mayor's team to finalize my job role. Outreach. Mentorship. Talking with vets who hadn't yet been seen. We'll call the program Reconnect, Monroe said. You good with that? Yeah, I said. Feels right. Later that week, I stopped by the cafe again. Just to see. The barista saw me. Stiffened. Then he did something that surprised me. He poured a fresh coffee. Walked it to the corner table. No charge. Just left it there. Didn't say a word. But his eyes said plenty. I nodded once and walked out. No need to sit. Sometimes, it's enough just to know you're welcome again. Word spreads fast among vets, faster than news ever can. The outreach program, Reconnect, hadn't officially launched, but already we had a list. Monroe called it the silent roster. Names of men and women who'd fallen off the grid. Some living in cars. Others couch surfing. Some just tired of explaining why everything still hurt. One by one, I called them. Sometimes they didn't answer. Sometimes they hung up. But a few showed. Like RJ, a former MP who hadn't spoken to anyone from his unit in 6 years. He walked into the community center with fists clenched and left with a housing voucher and a breakfast invite from Lil. Or Tanya, a former Navy nurse, now sleeping behind a laundromat. Melanie helped her sign up for aid on her laptop, walking her through the paperwork with quiet kindness. Why are you doing this? Tanya asked me. I thought for a moment and said, because someone should have done it for me. Melanie nodded, beside me. We're trying to make sure no one gets lost in the system again, she added. That night, as we walked home, Melanie turned to me. I think this matters, Dad. What you're doing. I think. It's healing something. I didn't reply. I just reached over and squeezed her hand. No words needed. A week before Veterans Day, Monroe asked me to speak at a school downtown, 8th graders. I hesitated. I wasn't used to standing in front of a crowd without a helmet or a mission. You've got both, she said. Just a different battlefield. So I went. Melanie came too, camera in hand. Said it might help to record it, for the program, or maybe just for us. The classroom was quiet when I walked in. 20-some kids, all elbows on desks, unsure what a man in scuffed boots could teach them. I didn't talk about war. I talked about after. What it feels like to go from uniform to invisible. To be asked, what do you do? And not know how to answer anymore. I told them the story of the cafe, but not the viral version. The real one. I told them how kindness isn't always loud, and respect doesn't always come with medals. At the end, one boy raised his hand. Do you regret serving? I looked at him, wide-eyed, honest, and said, not a second of it. What I regret is how we forget the ones who come home different. The teacher thanked me, shook my hand. The kids clapped. A few even stood. Outside, Melanie hit stop on her camera. You should do more of that, she said. I smiled. I think I will. Veterans Day came with clear skies and the kind of cold that reminds your bones you're still alive. The city had planned a modest ceremony, small park, modest stage, folding chairs. But word had spread. Not about the event. About the table. About the man who once walked out of a cafe in the rain and never looked back. I didn't expect to see so many faces. There were vets from every branch. Folks I hadn't seen since the convoy day. Families. Kids with tiny flags. One guy brought his dad's old dog tags, hung around his neck like armor. Melanie stood next to me at the edge of the crowd. Monroe handed me the mic. I kept it simple. I'm not here because I did something heroic. I'm here because others refused to let me disappear. I pulled the Purple Heart from my coat pocket, not for show, just for presence. It caught the morning light like it always did. I held it up. This isn't mine alone. It belongs to the ones who didn't make it back, and to the ones who did, but felt forgotten. The crowd stood silent. A few saluted. Others bowed their heads. Afterward, Monroe announced the next phase of Reconnect. Job training, mentorship, housing partnerships. A foundation. Literally. We'd secured a building for a permanent resource center. They wanted to name it after someone. I shook my head. Call it something better. So they named it the Flag Table. A place where no vet would be turned away. Not again. That night, I sat on my balcony with Melanie, sipping tea as the wind rustled through the leaves. She leaned her head on my shoulder. You built something, Dad. I looked out at the city. Yeah, I said. And it's only the beginning. I never thought I'd unpack that duffel bag for good. For years, it was my home in canvas form. A bed. A closet. A vault of every moment I couldn't let go of. But in the quiet of my new apartment, with a real dresser and walls painted warm, I did what I once couldn't. I unpacked. The Purple Heart went back on the nightstand. Not to glorify it, but to honor it. The folded flag from Evan's casket now hung in a shadow box above the couch. And the photo, 12 men in desert gear, finally had a frame without cracks. I kept the Father's Day card from Melanie on my fridge, right where it belonged. Reconnect had opened its doors. Vets came in every day, some for help, some just for a place to sit. I didn't wear a badge or a title, I just showed up. And that was enough. At the cafe, the corner table stayed full. No speeches, no fanfare, just quiet solidarity. A boy once asked why the veterans saluted when there was no flag. His father answered, "Sometimes, a man is the flag." I didn't need the cafe's apology. What I needed, what we all needed, was respect. And in the end, we found it not through anger, but through presence, through one another. Melanie returned to school in the spring, but she calls every Sunday now. She sends photos. She asks questions. We're learning each other again. One night, I asked her why she really came back that week. She said, "Because I realized you were never lost. You were just waiting for the world to see you again." Now, when I walk the city, people nod. Some thank me. Some just offer a smile. I don't need to be known by name, just recognized for the walk I've walked. That's enough. And on the days it rains, I still keep the old duffel bag by the door. Not because I need to leave, but because I remember when I had nowhere else to go. Sometimes, the past stays with you. But sometimes, you get to carry it differently. And for the first time in a long while, I'm carrying it with pride.